Kicking off my greatest Bucs of all time list. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Monday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I'm going to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I am bringing you the first half of my top 10 Tampa Bay Buccaneers of all time list as we start at number 10 and work our way to number 1, and who I believe is the greatest Buccaneer of all time. Now, this is how I view things, and I'm sure I'm going to get some blowback almost immediately, but no matter what order I have this listed, no matter what players I put in this top 10, someone out there was going to disagree. That's just what happens. But this is the official Locked On Bucs top 10 Buccaneers of all time. Let's get started at number 10, where I have tight end Jimmy Giles. Giles is, of course, a member of the Buccaneers Ring of Honor, and for good reason. He played for the Bucs from 1978 until 1986, where he racked up 279 receptions, 4,300 yards, and 34 touchdowns, averaging 15.4 yards per reception. He is still tied for second all-time in franchise history in touchdown receptions. The moment Chris Godwin gets his first touchdown of the season, that tie will be broken and Jimmy Giles will slide to third. But the impact that he had on teams that were really, to be honest, not good was more than evident. He is the greatest tight end in team history, and looking at just tight ends in team history, he's first in touchdowns, yards per catch, yards, and receptions, and then second in games played, trailing Cameron Brate by 5. Mind you, this is back, Jimmy Giles played back when the NFL season was 14 games, so he easily could have beat out Brate if the seasons were the same. He never had a 1,000-yard season, but you also have to remember that tight ends weren't used the same back in the 70s and 80s that they are now. So having 3 seasons over 600 yards and 4 seasons over 500 yards, he had 1 season where he had 499. Otherwise, he would have had 5 seasons of 500 yards or more. That is impressive given the era that he played in. He was selected to 4 Pro Bowls over the course of his career. All of them were while he was a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He also played for Houston in 1977. Then he played for Detroit in 1986 and 1987, and played for the Philadelphia Eagles in 1987 through 1989. However, those years were never anywhere close to as productive as his years in Tampa were, when he was one of the best tight ends in the National Football League. At number 9, here's probably where things are going to go off the rails for some of you listening or watching. At number 9, I have Mike Alstott. Alstott played his entire career with the Buccaneers from 1996 through 2006, when he was essentially forced to retire due to a lingering neck injury. That said, Alstott is one of the best backs in franchise history. 1,359 carries for 5,088 yards and 58 touchdowns. Then you add another 2,284 receiving yards on 305 receptions with another 13 touchdowns added in there. So all in all, Mike Alstott touched the football 1,664 times over his career with the Buccaneers. 30.5% of those touches resulted in either a first down or a touchdown. That is absolutely insane. You're talking about almost 1/3 of his touches resulted in extending a drive or finishing in the end zone. He is second all-time in yards and attempts, while he's first all-time in games and touchdowns. What made Alstott so incredible, though, wasn't the stats that he put up. It was the fact that it could be 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, and the Bucs could be on the goal line. Everybody knew who was getting the ball. The Bucs knew who was getting the ball. The Bucs fans knew who was getting the ball. The opposing team, the opposing coaches, the opposing fans, the beer vendors all knew who was going to get the football, and no one could stop it. Even when teams thought they had stopped Alstott and stuffed him at the line, or maybe even for a loss, he would end up bouncing off tacklers and then get into the end zone anyway. Or he would end up leaping over everyone when they all figured he was just going to run it up the gut, and he would go from the A train to the A plane. For as big as he was, Mike Alstott had an incredible amount of speed and agility to go with that power, which made him such a rare player. People can point to Derrick Henry and say the same thing, that his combination of size, power, speed, agility, footwork, all of those things. And Henry is probably the first back since Alstott to possess all of those things at that level. Mike Alstott was a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time first-team All-Pro, 1-time second-team All-Pro, and finished 3rd in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting in 1996. Plain and simple, Mike Alstott was just built different. And again, I go back to being the all-time leader in rushing touchdowns. We're going to talk more about another running back that also makes this list as I break down numbers 8 and 7 on my top 10 all-time Buccaneers list. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I am in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, the Dodgers are the favorites to win the World Series at plus 300, while the Tampa Bay Rays are struggling a little bit and are sitting at plus 13,000. If you'd rather get in on some NFL or NHL odds early on, the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers are tied atop the Super Bowl odds at plus 600, while the Buccaneers are at plus 5,500. Meanwhile, the Edmonton Oilers are the favorites in next year's Stanley Cup at plus 850, followed by the defending champion Florida Panthers at plus 950. Then the Tampa Bay Lightning, because they're stupid and let Steven Stamkos leave, are at plus 2,000. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Every day, make sure you're coming back tomorrow. I will round out my top 10 Buccaneers of all time. So you will get the first 5 on this episode, the second 5 coming up tomorrow. In the meantime, if you want to hear the latest news from around all of sports, NBA draft reactions, NHL free agency is about to start, NBA free agency still going on, NFL news because the NFL never sleeps. But you want to hear more than just national narratives and manufactured screaming? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get into number 8, I do want to send out my apologies to everyone. I had mentioned last week that I was going to have a 4th of July episode and then another one on Friday. Things went off the rails here. Had a surprise visit from my stepson who got to come home for a few days from the Navy. So we were spending a lot of time with him, getting caught up, and it just completely threw my schedule out of whack. So I want to apologize to all of you, but we're going to be here every single day this week doing this top 10 countdown. And then Evan Klosky will join me on Wednesday. But coming in at number 8 on my countdown is someone that I just talked about the other day on the Ring of Honor episode, and it is running back James Wilder, the all-time leading rusher in Bucs history with 5,957 yards, the second most rushing touchdowns in team history, 4th most yards per game, has the most yards in a single season with 1,544. That same year, he set the team record for rushing touchdowns in a season with 13. Also has the season with the 4th most rushing yards at 1,300 and has the most yards per game in a single season. On top of all of that, 3,492 receiving yards along with 9 receiving touchdowns. That is the most all-time among running backs. If you count Mike Alstott as a fullback instead of a running back, it's the most all-time. If not, and you want to count Mike Alstott as a running back, well, then James Wilder would be number 2 on the list in receiving touchdowns by a running back. He is, in my mind, the best running back in team history. Warrick Dunn was great, but he spent the prime of his career in Atlanta with the Falcons. Cadillac Williams was one of my favorite Buccaneers of all time, but Chucky ran him into the ground in his very first season. Then he had what should have been 2 career-ending injuries when he had the patella tendon in both of his knees snap, but he fought all the way back and came back after both injuries, which was simply incredible. One of the most feel-good stories in Buccaneers history was the Cadillac Williams comeback times 2. Michael Pittman was good. Doug Martin had his moments. Playoff Lenny will forever live in infamy, but no one stacks up against James Wilder. Maybe Rachaad White will one of these days, but he has a really, really long way to go if he is going to be talked about in the same breath as Mike Alstott and James Wilder in the best backs of all time conversation. You cannot talk about the history of the Buccaneers without mentioning the greatness of James Wilder, which is why he comes in at number 8 on my list. Coming in at number 7 is going to be probably another controversial choice in the minds of many, but to me, it's a slam dunk. He is arguably the greatest quarterback in team history, and number 7 is Tom Brady. Look, I get it. He was only with the team for 3 years. He was with them from 2020 through 2022. But you go back to that Ring of Honor episode that we had about a week and a half ago, what Tom Brady was able to do in those 3 years was nothing short of incredible. First and foremost, winning a Super Bowl in his first year with the team while dealing with all of the COVID restrictions that were put in place that season, not getting a proper offseason, not getting a full offseason, having to run his own individual workouts at a high school field in order to start to get these guys onto the same page, get Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Cameron Brate on the same page so they know what Brady expected of them. That alone is absolutely unreal. But I will run through the numbers once again really quick because 3 years he rewrote the books. The Buccaneers' third all-time leader in passing yards with 14,643. The all-time leader is Winston with 19,737. He played 2 more years than Tom Brady did with the Buccaneers. Then Vinny Testaverde is second with just, 170 more passing yards than Tom Brady, and he played for the Buccaneers for 6 seasons. Brady is second all-time in touchdown passes with 108. Winston is the all-time leader. He's got 121. Again, only in 3 years, he's 13 touchdown passes short of the all-time leader. He's the all-time leader in completion percentage with 66.7 with a minimum of 5 starts. The all-time leader in quarterback rating at 98.1. Again, a minimum of 5 starts. Second all-time in game-winning drives with 13, trailing Doug Williams by 1. All-time leader in playoff wins, playoff passing yards, playoff touchdown passes, and most importantly, he has that Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 55. In 3 seasons, he has 3 of the top 4 single seasons in passing yards. He had the top 2 single season touchdown marks, the top 2 single season quarterback ratings, again, at least 5 starts, the best or the second best single season completion percentage with at least 5 starts at 67.5%. Brian Greasy completed 69.3% in 2004 when only starting 10 games. He also has the most game-winning drives in a single season with 5, and he did it 2 times. You can say what you want about Tom Brady. I know there are some Buccaneers fans that still don't really care for him. They didn't want him. They didn't want to be the team that signed the 40-plus-year-old quarterback. You can call him a hired assassin. You can call him a mercenary. You can call him whatever you want. The fact of the matter is that he is the best quarterback that the Buccaneers have ever had, and it shows in the numbers in the short time that he was here. He rewrote the record books in just 3 years. If he had 4 or 5, he would be at the top of every single category and might have even won a second Super Bowl. As great as Doug Williams was, it as unfortunate as that split was, thanks to the stupidity and mismanagement of owner Hugh Culverhouse at the time, the Buccaneers haven't had a quarterback in the same stratosphere as Tom Brady, and that's why, to me, he is a top 10 Buccaneer of all time. Who knows? Maybe when we revisit this list 5 years from now, 7 years from now, Baker Mayfield will have worked his way onto this list. That's what everyone's going to hope for, because that means that he's putting up incredible numbers and he's winning championships. I'm going to round out the first half of the countdown with number 6. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, brakes, rotors. Right now, I'm car shopping and I'm starting to look at truck bed covers for the truck that I want to get. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Wrapping things up here on a Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast, and I'm rounding up the first half of this countdown with number 6. And this one, it hurts me a little bit, because growing up watching the Buccaneers, when I was really young, through the 90s and, into the 2000s, all the way until now, obviously, this guy was my absolute favorite player. The first Buccaneers jersey that my son ever had was this guy's jersey, and it's John Lynch. Lynch finally got into the Hall of Fame after waiting far too long, and one of the most telling things about how good he was Tony Dungy constantly talking about how the only way his defense worked was with John Lynch at safety. He had so many jobs, so many responsibilities that without him, the Tampa 2 never would have been as effective as it was, leading to one of the greatest defenses the NFL has ever seen. And let's not forget that he might be one of the top 4 hardest hitting safeties of all time. Ronnie Lott, Ed Reed, Sean Taylor, John Lynch. Put them in whatever order you want. I don't think there has ever been, I don't think there has ever been another safety that hit guys as hard as those 4 gentlemen. John Lynch played with the Buccaneers from 1993 until 2003 before moving on to the Denver Broncos. One of those moments that kind of signaled the end of an era. Warren Sapp had already left for the Oakland Raiders. John Lynch leaves for the Denver Broncos. But Lynch finished his Bucs career with 23 interceptions, 42 passes defensed, 7 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, 6 sacks, and 788 tackles. 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. And of course, let's not forget, I know all of you, every single one of you have seen the highlights, have seen the mic'd up video of John Lynch screaming at Dexter Jackson in Super Bowl 37, sluggo seam, it's sluggo seam, Dexter, sluggo seam. He read it perfectly from the alignment of the Raiders, alerted Jackson, and Jackson ends up picking off a Rich Gannon pass, one of his 2 interceptions that night on his way to being the Super Bowl 37 MVP. Lynch is one of the greatest defensive players in team history. He is the greatest safety in team history as it stands right now. And he is one of 4 members of that Super Bowl winning defense to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's one of 5 Buccaneers to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And his number 47 will never be worn in Tampa again. Now, he's orchestrated one of the best rosters in the league as the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers. And if John Lynch wasn't as good at his job as he is, I would probably be yelling about that quite a bit on this show, about how the Buccaneers let John Lynch go from the Fox announcer booth to the front office of the San Francisco 49ers to build a consistent contender. They've been to the Super Bowl, I believe it's twice under John Lynch. It might be 3 times. Hasn't won it yet, but San Francisco is always in the mix. So, if Jason Light was not as good at his job, I would be very upset that one of my all-time favorite Buccaneers players is working for another team and not the GM of the Buccaneers. So, to recap the first half of this countdown, at number 10, we have tight end Jimmy Giles. Number 9 is fullback Mike Alstott. Number 8 is running back James Wilder. Number 7 is quarterback Tom Brady. And at 6, Hall of Fame safety John Lynch. Let me know in the comments who you think is in the top 5 and what order you think they're going to be in, but especially let me know who you believe is going to come in at number 1 on this countdown. Of course, I will have the answer for that coming up for you on tomorrow's show. All I ask, you can disagree with me all you want. All I ask is that you be respectful. If you're not respectful in your disagreement, I'll block your comments from the YouTube channel because I'm not here to deal with any rudeness. I get it. Mike Alstott is a huge fan favorite, and me putting Brady above him is going to ruffle some feathers and rub some people the wrong way, but just calling it like I see it. Please check out everything going on over at bucsnation.com. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. No ads, no hashtags, nothing like that. Just one-on-one text conversations with me. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.